No, you did watch it.
I got to help editorial team at News One live blog part of it. So I got sucked in for the second half. But it's pretty much what a lot of us thought, and why many people were like, what's the point of turning? Why give him any of this? The one thing I will say is that uh, the American media is absolutely complicit, and we need to stop just running headlines, commentary, press conferences without. I know it's a big lift to do live fact checking because that man lies
Yeah.
or distorts or misconstrues. I don't know how many times in a minute. But Adrian, there were parts, I think I was telling you before, there were parts that really felt like a white citizens council meeting or
Yeah,
a
I
Klan
said
rally.
yeah, I said it was a Klan rally. And that was and that was true last year as well when he did his
It
joint
was.
address,
Yeah.
right? It was
And it's just like everyone else got a day pass, right? If we were trying to open up to show they're like the new Klan, like they're
mhm.
not the old racist hood Klan, they're the new Klan. So like Kosh Patel and Tim Scott got a day pass to come join them. Even to the point where we have the Republicans in the chamber shouting down USA, USA over Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Representative Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar, folks may recall, is a representative from Minnesota. Ilhan Omar has been targeted by members of the administration, her colleagues across the aisle in the House, and is representing like people in the district who have been murdered,
Right.
who have been brutalized. And
Mhm.
her guest actually was the young woman. We all saw the viral video. She was just trying to get to her doctor's appointment, and she was pulled out of her car and brutalized by ICE. You have Trump upset people won't stand, but then she stood silently and then was violently removed from the chamber the other
Yeah.
night. It was so full of, because Trump keeps repeating the same things that have been debunked, not just even since he first started this year, from
Mhm.
even his first term. Facts are that these vague plans about throwing money at healthcare, regardless what your issues are with the ACA, they will be devastating for all of us. The
Mhm.
Trump RX card, why does this man have his name all over everything?
Right.
Trump RX is literally just good RX, the discount pharmacy card. They have a partnership. It's literally the same thing. It just has on some Trump swag. Like it's not a real plan. Even bragging about drugs coming into the country being down, but that data point's not even true because it's
Right.
seizures, not that what's actually coming in. And Border Patrol tracks marijuana more so than anything else. But apparently, Adrian, according to the Coast Guard, cocaine is up 200%.
Yes, of course it is.
Like, it's just so
Well,
many different things. Affordability, like everything is
it's all lies. I mean, I think
it's
this is
all
the
lies
thing.
and all
Yeah.
upside down.
Going into it, what was clear was that they needed to shift reality, right? Like
Yeah,
his poll numbers are in the trash, including with his own supporters. He's
yeah,
underwater on every single issue that he and Republicans, quite frankly, have always been seen as strong on: the economy, immigration, just underwater, right? He cannot run away from the fact that his name is in the Epstein files a million times. Um,
more
he
than the Bible, more than
right.
Jesus, like more than references. And I mean,
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that we learned today that, or today or this week, I guess, that the FBI actually withheld documents in the Epstein files that are interviews with a young person who accuses him of rape, and so he can't run away from that. All people are outraged about ICE, right? Even folks who think
yeah,
that his immigration policy is fine, they do not like the way that ICE is operating. And so they needed to change the narrative. He's
yeah.
underwater, obviously, on the economy. Everybody knows it. He can say that prices are going down as much as he wants, but every single person, including his supporters, got to go to the grocery store just like the rest of us. They know it's not true. They needed to create a new reality, right, for their
Mhm.
base. And so they threw them all the things that they thought that they would bite onto, including racism, right? You have the president of the United States in a joint address to the United States Congress singling out a minority group, like one minority group, talking about how we need to get rid of them. Now,
Yes,
like, there is no way
yeah,
around what that language is. Talking about Black Americans, talking about Somali Americans in that way means only one thing, but it also means that you turn your base and those people who might be violent within your base on that community. The other thing that he did that was outrageous, and you have Republicans standing up and cheering for it, right? Then you have him essentially directing, violent political rhetoric at Democrats, right? Calling them crazy, right? Using language
Yep.
that suggests that they should be removed from the political body of the United States of America, right? Like, this is dangerous, dangerous language. And Republicans stood up and
And
cheered
clapped.
for it.
And yep.
It said that, yes, this is what we think of our colleagues, right? And Janelle Monáe
And
and you
lied again about the election and
that's
cheating. The
right.
only cheaters, the only fraud
Right.
is in that chamber and his bestie, Elon Musk.
That's right.
Um, but yeah, like everything you said, Adrian, I mean, there was so much red meat. And I mean, I think the thing that bothers me too is, and I can only imagine whether or not people who appear at the State of the Union at the request of this president or other folks agree with him ideologically. They probably do, they probably don't, whatever. But to use the pain of there are parents grieving their daughter who was murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina, and to lie. He lied and said that her death was due to open border policies and violent, non-citizens. Not using his I'm not using his language.
Mhm.
But based on NPR fact check, based on reporting local, like the person who, it's unfortunate. It does not disparage her death or the loss that her family
Sure.
feels. However, we can't let that be used to lie and justify his atrocious immigration policy, his atrocious crackdown on or attempts to crack down on crime, which is at a historic low, not because of him, just
Mhm.
because it's happening. But they lied. Like that person
Well,
was, by all accounts, born in Charlotte, is an American citizen.
right.
Um,
Yeah, the other thing on that point, though, is just like the graphic description of violence and
yeah,
hate. Like,
yeah,
there's something that he kind of gets off on doing that. And this isn't the first time that he's done it, right? Like,
yeah,
graphically
yeah,
describing how someone was murdered. There's something just there's
yeah.
a sickness, right? In all this.
It's
But we
yeah.
did have people push back, right? We saw Al Green, as you said earlier, once again, standing up with his sign. For those of you who didn't see it, Al Green had a sign that said, "Black people aren't apes," that he held up, put it in Trump's face. Trump tried to walk away from it. And then they threw Al Green out once again, as they did last year when he stood up and said, "You're not going to talk about us like this." So Al Green, that you had Ilhan Omar, and
Mhm.
Rashida Tlaib saying, yelling back at him when he was being racist, yelling back at him. So you had people standing up, but you also had folks who just said, "I'm not going." There were many Democrats, both Senate Democrats
Yeah.
and congressional House representatives, who said, "I won't do it," right? And they didn't go. And so there were alternatives that folks did for, if you didn't want to watch it like me, you could go and watch one of the others. One that was huge, in fact, millions and millions of views. I think the last time I looked, they might have been at 5 million views. Was an alternative that was sponsored, I think, by Move On and Midas Touch, the
Yep.
independent media firm. And there were lots of folks who showed up for that in real life, in real person, who showed up for that in DC. One of them was my representative, Congresswoman Sydney Comlonger Dove, who had a lot to say. And we're going to take a listen to her for a moment. Listen to what Representative Comlonger Dove had to say. So that was a lot. It was inspiring. And I think one of the things that was important about what the Congresswoman did was that when she did that shift, like, we're not going to talk about him anymore. Let's talk about what we want. Right. Let's talk about the future that we want to build. Right. She talked about corporate accountability. She talked about bringing down costs. She talked about the importance of education that opens up doors. She talked about fixing the immigration system and not punishing people, and particularly people who are already trying to do it the right way, right? Just to be clear, we're punishing those people too. She talked about empowering local communities, and she talked about saving democracy, right? That's
Mhm.
so important, to not just dwell on the nonsense of what is coming out of the White House and out of the Republican Party right now, but to be thinking about what is the future of the country that we want.
I mean, I think what I really appreciate so much too, like from some of the clips I got to hear from the People Say the Union. I also listened to the WFP response with Representative Summer Lee from Pittsburgh. It's just like really the contrast, right? And this again goes back to my thing about the media. We have a very dark dystopian disinformation filled event being broadcast over all the networks, all the streaming platforms, and yet we do have these messages about like that are very focused on people, the issues, everything we're hearing from folks that they want to know, what they want people to be talking about. And it's not just talking about it, right? We've seen, the track record of Representative Kamala Dove, of Summer Lee, of other folks, right, who are actually like putting forth the legislation and the initiatives and things we need. And we're in midterms. Texas's primaries coming up. I know folks have been early voting. North Carolina's coming up. I mean, we're in midterm 2026 is already underway.
Well, Mississippi is coming up also.
Mississippi's coming
so
up.
You have two Democratic Senate primaries happening, one in Texas, one in Mississippi. And as you said, voting is happening right now. So again, I keep saying like the midterms aren't coming. They are here. I think early vote ends for voting in Texas today. So because the election is Tuesday. So the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate seat in Texas between Jasmine Crockett and James Tellerico is days from now, right? And so one of the things that race has been heating up, right? There was a poll that came out recently that has Jasmine Crockett leading Tellerico by double digits at this point. So we'll see what happens in that race, but that's a critical race that is happening. We also know that what we're going to see is lots of efforts to suppress the vote, right? To stop the vote. And we got a ruling from the Supreme Court this week that also feels like a part of the game to stop mail ballots. Can you talk about that for just?
Yeah. So just seeing the Supreme Court, authored by Clarence Thomas, surprise, surprise. It's like a 5-4 decision, I think it was. And just deciding that it's not, basically there's a Black woman who her mail was being withheld from her by her local post office. And that itself is not like an actionable,
Right.
like it's okay. You can decide that you don't want to give people their mail.
You can't sue the post office
for not
because you don't get your mail or because they break your stuff, right? You can't sue the post office for that. But this is a discrimination case.
But apparently you can't sue them if they withhold your mail because you're Black.
Her claim is that because she was the owner of the apartment building, that they decided, and her tenants were white, that they didn't like that. And the mail carriers just decided that they weren't going to deliver the mail there. And so the Supreme Court essentially said, you can't sue the post office for not getting your mail for any reason. And so therefore, you can be a letter carrier and decide you're not giving people their mail.
Plus Trump's renewed attack on vote by mail and absentee ballots,
right,
and all the other shenanigans that are going to happen could mean for a very difficult time for folks who that is their mechanism that they use. I mean, if you're using mail in terms of your voter registration, because that is something else they want to remove some of the different ways we're allowed to do voter registration through legislation that's pending. So there are quite a few things that could be problematic in terms of our ability to engage in the electoral process as a result of that. Just not to mention if you're not getting direct deposit and you're still someone who gets checks or anything else vital importance in the mail, the fact that the post office could just decide they don't want to, mess with you is a problem, considering it's a public service, it's a public good. Yep. We're all supposed to get our mail. We're all supposed to get without issue.
I will say that Congress could solve that problem. Pass legislation to say, except for if you are discriminating against people. So Congress could actually fix this. They will not. But that is where we are. Like the elections are here, the midterms are here, and we need to be diligent about making sure that our vote is cast and our vote is counted. When we come forward, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other things that came up directly, indirectly, maybe in some ways, in the State of the Union that the administration then acted on after the State of the Union. So stay with us. We have a lot to talk about.
More of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. The NAACP Greater Grand Rapids, Michigan branch is speaking out after 32-year-old DeQuayne Johnson was shot and killed by a Grand Rapids officer while fleeing police. The group is questioning the use of deadly force and demanding the release of body camera footage. Johnson's mother says she wants her son to be the last black child to die unjustly. Maryland Congressman Kwesi Mfume and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker have introduced the African American History Act of 2026. The bill would provide $20 million over 5 years to support education programs through the National Museum of African American History and Culture and formally define African American history to include slavery, the Civil Rights Movement, and the contributions of Black Americans. In Black Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser says D.C. college students will get more tuition support with the D.C. Tuition Assistance Grant increasing to $15,000 a year and a $75,000 lifetime cap. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
Do you really know what's in your tap water? We believe your water should support your health, not work against it. Upgrade your home with a LifeSource whole house system. Clean water from every tap, no salt, no hassle. Call 1-800-WATER-99 or visit lifesourcewater.com.
Warranty limitations apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers' 3-game losing streak has put them only one spot away from the play-in round in the Western Conference. The Lakers are 1 game ahead of Phoenix, the number 7 team in the West. The 7 through 10 teams have to go through the play-in round just to make the playoffs. The Lakers need to get right over the final 14 games of the regular season. The Rams and Chargers will have an extra $22 million to spend on player salaries for next season. The NFL announced an increase in the salary cap. Each of the 32 teams will have a total of $301.2 million for player contracts. Tonight at 6, you can get your Friday night sports fix with Out of Bounds in prime time. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough for 60 minutes of sports chatter with some black folks flavor. You can hang out with us on the KBLA YouTube channel or hit us up at 1-800-920-1580. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Break out the champagne. Everybody get a glass.
Tavis Smiley is now ranked number 16 nationally and the highest rated talk show hosted by an African American on the 2025 Talkers Heavy 100 list of the most important talk radio hosts in the nation. Last year, Tavis ranked number 33 and the year before, number 45. The Tavis Smiley Show has rapidly expanded its national syndication to now include nearly 50 radio stations across the country and counting. Congratulations, Tavis.
Yay!
They call it progress, but progress has a price. Land once held in black hands, taken, stolen, erased. Acres paved into highways, fields burned. Homes replaced by parking lots and broken promises. Every deed lost was a dream deferred. We talk about millionaires, but what about the millionaires that never were? The farmers whose soil was seized. The families who watched their inheritance disappear. The wealth that never had a chance to grow because its roots were ripped from the ground. They took the land, but never the legacy, because the soil remembers, and so do we. Every story matters. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and amplify these stories. If this is part of your family's history, visit blacklandlost.org/share your story and help bring us closer to justice.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Michael's Daughter Foundation is dedicated to inspiring youth and resilience through storytelling, arts, filmmaking, and enrichment programs for youth and families in under-resourced communities and system-impacted individuals. The Michael's Daughter Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit providing free and low-cost arts programs to youth and families from under-resourced communities, both system-impacted youth and those affected by the incarceration of a loved one. 1 in 43 children in America have a parent incarcerated. 70% of those children are expected to end up in prison. Through filmmaking, animation, theater, and writing, they help young people express themselves, build confidence, and imagine new possibilities. Beyond the arts, they offer financial literacy workshops, emergency support, and scholarships. Because thriving takes more than talent, it takes access. To learn more about the impact of Michael Daughters Foundation and how you can be a part of the movement, please visit their website, michaelsdaughterfoundation.com. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to the Black Pack, and I am joined by my co-host, Noah Changa, today, talking about just the wildness of the week, the wildness of the month, and specifically about the State of the Union. Before the break, we were discussing what went down, what was ugly about it. But there were some things that sort of jumped outside of the State of the Union speech and then showed up in real life. And one of the things that the President of the United States talked about was the safety net, right? I have not gone back and read 1984. I read it in high school. I know we're living in, some version of that book right now. I have not gone back to read it, but I do know doublespeak when I hear it, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start saying things like, I lifted millions of people off of SNAP, right? I lifted millions of people off of, food assistance. What you're saying is I kicked people, I took food out of children's mouths, and then you want people to stand up and applaud you for that, right? I did not feed the poor Christian people, right? Or I did not feed the hungry. And so that was sort of again, one of the tells, right? Trying to pretend that you did something good that was actually quite horrible, and it's horrible, which is why you're trying to paint over it. Immediately after the State of the Union on Wednesday, the administration announced that they are cutting Medicaid payments from Minnesota. Right? They are not going to send Medicaid payments to the state of Minnesota. And so this is a part of this literally ongoing war that the federal government has with one of the states, Minnesota, right? That is a reaction to Minnesota not capitulating. That the people of Minnesota and their political leadership, their governor, not capitulating, their mayors, not bowing down to the federal government, not bowing down to Trump. We saw for weeks what was happening in terms of ICE and the federal agents literally murdering people in the middle of the street in Minneapolis. It is still going on for people. Just because the cameras left doesn't mean that people aren't still being snatched and disappeared. They, again, attacking in a very directly racist way the Somali community, saying that there was fraud in child care centers. And so they, needed to be under investigation, and all Somalis needed to be, deported because they're all fraudulent. And now they're saying that they're going to withhold Medicaid payments. That means people are going to go without health care. People will die because they do not have access to health care in Minnesota because the federal government is punishing the citizens of Minnesota because they won't bow down to him.
And people also don't realize, Adrianne, that Medicaid payments, when you talk about Medicaid and like how those programs are funded, there's also some lower income senior citizens that are receiving Medicaid, right? We're also talking about some funding for programming that involve children. And there's just a lot in terms of, there's been a lot of documentation and conversation about Medicaid recipients and the households in terms of people, disability status. There are people already working or engaged in some type of activity when people get into this whole worthiness thing. Right. But you're absolutely correct. And when we're talking about the way in which we've watched the escalation and the really this federal government attacking this state in particular because of its solidarity with primarily the communities. And it's not just in the Twin Cities, even though that's where we focus, but around the state. Minnesota's being brutalized in this way as a warning to everyone else as well, right? Because we saw the offer from the DOJ, not DHS, which controls ICE, to, oh, we'll make this go away if you just give us your voter file. Now it's, oh, well, we're just going to keep your Medicaid payments. And there's no rationalization or justification for this singling out. But this is the same thing that we've seen the Trump administration trying to do time and again since it returned to power, since the president returned to power, in terms of singling out Democratic-led states or states with, sizable Democratic presences where they've tried to attack them, whether it's, like you said, food stamps, Medicaid, and other funding and payments that are just a part of the tax dollars that we are all paying in our communities. California, right? I see people all the time from California talk about like how much California as a state contributes financially to the country's GDP. And what would it be if like states just held back their federal funds, right? Like the federal government, like Trump is really governing like this is some type of, he's some type of mafioso boss and he can, push people around. But Minnesotans so far so good have still been standing very firm and clear. And, like you said, the cameras, the emphasis, the heightened, raids are not exactly the same as they were maybe a month ago, but it doesn't mean it's any less of a problem. And we're seeing a completely different strategy emerge in terms of the way in which they're shifting towards the warehousing and other stuff they're trying to do around the country. So it's a problem. And the Medicaid stuff,
and it's
we can be appalled.
Again, double standard, right? And so, when Trump was president last time and the governor of Mississippi misappropriated and misused $94 million in TANF money, right, in temporary assistance for needy families money, to direct that money towards sports programs and Brett Favre and others, right, misappropriated that money. There was no question, from the federal government about, withholding dollars, right, for needy people in Mississippi. But for Minnesota, where there is no evidence of any kind, right, that there is some Medicaid fraud happening, right, just simply straight cruelty and punishment for not bowing down. Because
disinformation from chaos agents online.
That's right. Yeah. So yes, particularly on the child care front, right? But this has happened in red states, right? In egregious ways where there is evidence and can be proven, right? That money that was supposed to go to people in need, to families in need, actually went to grift and corruption scandals, right? Or projects, enterprises. And no one in the Republican Party in the federal government had a word to say about it. So it just feels like, and obviously this is not a surprise, right? Like that data point is not a surprise to anyone. But it is, I think, as you said, this idea that these are warnings to everyone else about what the federal government will do. It will punish your people. It will starve your people. It's the same thing we're doing in the international space, getting rid of USAID. And so suddenly you have children starving in refugee camps in Kenya, right? You have children dying in Uganda who needed medical assistance and could not get it, right? Like this administration is doing to American citizens exactly what it is doing to communities around the globe.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, and the cruelty is the point, right? It is also, there's this facade of caring about family and Christian values, right? And none of this is in alignment. I mean, I'm a first person of faith, grew up with religious folks in the family, did not grow up in church, but I did learn a few things. And this is not what I learned for the strong Christian values. My grandma and my uncle who led a church, like this is not what folks, raised me to believe in. And so that's what we're seeing. And we're really seeing in many ways, Adrianne, I know people talk about realignment. They are really trying to create and cultivate a place that is for them and the people they decide should be with them. And then it's all the rest of us are just, left to the wayside. And it should be a problem for everyone, whether you specifically receive Medicaid or not. You probably know someone who does. And even if you don't, you should want people to be healthy and not sick and to have what they need to thrive and move forward in life. I mean, at least care about kids and old people. I mean, I don't know.
Right. Yes, at least do that. Like if you can do nothing else. All right. When we come forward, we're going to pick up on a couple of other items that were that jumped out of the State of the Union and then have shown up in really unfortunate and in fact deadly ways. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
There was a time when I parented out of stress and emotion until one day I heard my father's voice coming out of me. In that moment of pause, I realized that I was on autopilot and I decided that I needed to do things differently. I'm Lisanne Basquiat. I'm a legacy healing strategist, and I want you to join me for Your Past is Your Present. It's a virtual workshop on generational healing, and it's happening on March 1st. Sign up today at shapingfreedom.com. Space is limited, and your healing could start right now.
Getting around LA doesn't have to cost a lot. Metro has fares that fit every budget. 20 free rides for qualified riders through the Life Fare program. Free passes for students with GoPass and affordable options for everyone in between. Wherever you're going, Metro's got you covered. Visit metro.net/fare programs.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-478-6430 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-478-6430. That's 800-478-6430. What do you have to lose? Call 800-478-6430. Again, 800-478-6430.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You don't talk to me like that. Don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
You are listening to the Black Pack, and I am joined by my co-host, Anoa Changa, today, talking about the news of the week, the news of the month. One of the things that I think folks know, it's a little bit hard to tell, because when we talk about this partial government shutdown that is currently happening, it isn't the big government shutdown that we experienced last year. And so I don't know how much folks are paying attention to it, Anoa. It is a partial government shutdown because the Democrats in the Senate stopped funding from going to the Department of Homeland Security, and they stopped that funding from going to DHS because of the way the brutality, the murders, right, being committed by ICE agents. And so Democrats in the House and in the Senate said no funding until you adhere to some basic rules, right?
And it's super basic.
Super
It's not even like these are like the major calls people are making right now. It's super basic.
Body cams. You got to have a warrant to go in people's houses and start pulling and snatching them out of there, right? There have to be investigations, right? If there's violence and death, or if officers act inappropriately, you got to do some basic things. They have not been able to come to an agreement with the White House, right? Because they're the ones calling all the shots, right? They're not even negotiating with their Senate colleagues at this point. So they've not been able to come to an agreement, and therefore DHS funding it has stopped, right? Doesn't mean that ICE isn't still operating, because ICE got their money. They got their money last September. So they still were in that big stupid bill, right? So they got all that money. It just raises the question that we should be paying attention to, which is actually the destructive force that is ICE and Border Patrol right now, right? And so I think that, we talk a lot because we see what's happening in the streets. We see the ICE agents snatching people. We see them snatching children. We see them using children. We see them showing up outside schools, right? So we see the sort of the violence, and we see the cruelty, right? That you talked about earlier, that the cruelty is the point. Thank you, Adam Soror, for giving us that term. But we also don't talk a lot about what's happening in ICE facilities. We know that Democratic members of Congress have been trying to go to ICE facilities and investigate, right, and see what's happening with their constituents, right, inside those ICE facilities. But we also, know that 32 people died in ICE custody in 2025, right? That was the highest death toll in 20 years, right? We know that 8 people at least. I'm not sure if that number's up to date. There should be a tracker somewhere, honestly, as like vile and repulsive as that is. There should be a tracker, right, saying how many people are dying in ICE custody. But I think that at least 8 people have died in ICE facilities since then. And so there's something wrong, right? There's something wrong in the system. We know that people are being violated. We know that there's reports about the overcrowding, that people aren't, there's no bathrooms, there's so crowded in the containment units that people have to stand up. So there's something very wrong happening inside of here, and we know that because we have a prison system that does the same thing to people. So this is not new, but it is wrong. And so I wanted to just, because a couple of other things have happened, right, in the last few days, related to ICE and Border Patrol. And one of the stories that just really popped off the page to me that's just very sad is a story out of New York, out of Buffalo, New York, where a Burmese refugee, a man from Burma, was out on a walk, and used a stick, basically, right, as a walker. He's out on a walk. He gets approached, accosted by Buffalo police. He does not speak English, right? He uses the stick for walking because he's blind, right? So he's basically maybe not fully, but he's basically blind. He doesn't speak English. The police start yelling orders at him. He cannot understand them. They're telling him to put down his weapon, which is a curtain rod that he uses as an aid when he's walking. He doesn't understand them. They tase him. They beat him. And then they hand him over to Border Patrol because he's a refugee, right? So they hand him over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol drops him off on the other side of town by himself, this blind man who doesn't speak English, on the other side of town. His family reports him missing, and then they find the man dead on the street. So this is crazy, right? And this is also about the complicity of local law enforcement, in cooperating, right, with Border Patrol and ICE. But this is such a sad story. This older man, right? This older man dies on the street because he's 56 years old, right? He dies on the street because he didn't
He's like
speak
5
English.
miles away from his home or something like that, I
5
think they
miles away from
said.
his home. They dropped him off 5 miles away from his home, and we're basically like, "Good luck, blind man who doesn't speak English." But that's the kind of cruelty, right? I think that we are confronted with in this country right now.
And we've been seeing cases like that in terms of ICE, just people being released and just dropped off wherever without anything, without their papers that have been seized from them, anything, their property seized from them. I mean, but this is another, like you said, Adrian, it highlights the cruelty. It highlights, because also what's the point of having him be detained for so long if you're just going to release? Like you're detaining and brutalizing people and then turning them back out on the streets. For what purpose and what end, right? And this, we've always said this, everyone was very clear that all the rhetoric about this is about the criminals and the worst of the worst. Look, I don't know him personally, but this don't sound like some menacing figure that is, I don't know, convicted and sentenced to 45 years of trying to bring cocaine into the country, like the ex-president of Honduras, who Trump, pardoned in December. So it gets back to already, like you said, there's already a precedent of the abuse and what we've seen in terms of the U.S. prison system in general, right? But now we're looking at what it is, whether it's in the private prisons and these private detention camps, or now that the federal government itself is going to get in the business of warehousing people in literal warehouses. We're seeing a serious increase in these human rights violations and just basic respect for people. Because that's also like how do you look at someone, whether, no matter how old they are, whatever, how do you look at someone who's a vulnerable person and you mistreat them without any concern, without any, the man is blind, but you leave him far away from where he's at. Like, you give them no recourse to get back home. Like, that's beyond cruel. It's actually kind of psychotic.
The man was blind in one eye and got lost on his walk. And this is the other thing about just like how we treat our neighbors. I think that Minnesota is, like the pinnacle of demonstrating right now of how we treat our neighbors. But the man got lost and tried to get help. He went to a woman's house. This is how the police got called. He went to a woman's house, ended up on her porch trying to get help to figure out how to get back home. She called the cops on him. A blind man with a curtain rod that he was using as a walking aid, and she called the police, and the police came, yelled orders at him again. Like, this is I said the story, but there's so much cruelty in this story for this man to then end up dead.
And like, to your point, right? Like, even if there is some concern, you don't really know, you have some weird person on your front porch, right? Like, from the person behind the door's perspective, again, not justifying anything, but like, the police and their responsiveness, but this is why people often say police are not the ones that should be responsive in issues of care, and why we need other alternatives a part of the system as well, because this is someone who's not doing anything allegedly illegal, suspected illegal, whatever, and is clearly in distress, and simply not being able to speak English for now is still not grounds to arrest anyone, no matter what the president or his DHS says.
Right. Yes. This is the fact that DHS, this is the reason why, I guess I should say, DHS is not getting funding right now. Like, just dropping people off in the middle of the nowhere in New York, where there is multiple blizzards happening seemingly every day.
And if people are indoors, then dropping someone off wherever you're dropping them off, they might not be found.
That's right.
In time for anyone to even help them.
That's right. So I say that just so that I tell that story so that folks will pay attention to what's happening in terms of the inappropriate use of federal resources to detain and round people up, hurt people, and even kill people, or seemingly are the cause of their death. To pay attention to these stories that are happening as well beyond when we see the big flare-ups in cities. Those are important, but the cruelty and the inhumanity of what is happening right now is beyond what we see on the nightly news. When we come forward, Noah's going to have a conversation about public education. We've been doing focus groups around the country, and And one of the things that comes up as a key and central issue for Black voters is the issue of education. It's important that we continue to track what's happening with education and what the future of education looks like for our children. This is the Black Pack here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. The NAACP Greater Grand Rapids, Michigan branch is speaking out after 32-year-old DeQuayne Johnson was shot and killed by a Grand Rapids officer while fleeing police. The group is questioning the use of deadly force and demanding the release of body camera footage. Johnson's mother says she wants her son to be the last Black child to die unjustly.